Welcome to the Customer First Show, putting customers at the heart of your business. So, welcome to the latest episode of the Customer First podcast. My name's Naeem, and I'm really pleased to have a special guest all the way from New Jersey. I'll let her introduce herself, but she comes with an immense amount of experience and in a lot of industries, which I think are very relevant today. So, Stacy, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Yes, Stacy Sherman. I am a customer experience leader, strategist, practitioner, digital marketer as well, known for humanizing business and differentiating brands beyond price. And my day job, I'm the Director of Customer Experience and Employee Engagement at Schindler Elevator Corporation. Previously, I was at Verizon. And when I'm not at work, I am writing for Forbes, speaking and coaching people all about doing CX right, which is a whole framework around maximizing satisfaction based on heart and science.
I love that. So doing CX right, I'd love to dig into that a little bit, but let's not discount. I mean, so many of us, you've come through a range of experiences. You've worked in a lot of different ways, and maybe we've only just recently started calling it CX, but you've been in this area for a long time, haven't you?
I have, and like many of us, we've been doing CX for so long, but it became more formalized in the past, several years, where there's a real formal practice to it. I think in the past, people called it customer service, which is true. It's a huge part of doing CX right, but that's more about the get help stage of the journey. And what we do is much broader.
Yeah, agree. So tell me, I was really attracted by your name initially, doing CX right. Is there a theory behind that? Is there an approach? Is there a mission behind it? Why did you come up with the name?
So truthfully, it came from being both a customer of many, many brands and being very frustrated by the experiences, as well as having been in corporate places and working with clients in the past, and as an employee where inclusion was an issue and employee satisfaction wasn't there. And so I saw so many examples of it not right. And so I'm a positive person. So I said, you know what, I'm going to talk about doing CX right, not the wrong things. And that's really the concept behind it.
Yeah, because in a way, we can all sit back and complain about things, but we can either become part of the problem or become part of the solution. It sounds very much like you're a go get them type person, and you've taken some initiative there. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And I'm so hopeful that people listening today will realize that, yes, we're talking about real CX methodologies and practice, but there's so much basics that people can do. And you don't need a degree in CX. There's a lot of human factors that are in our control, and we could talk about that too.
So, well, let's talk about that now, if you don't mind. So,
Sure.
What are those fundamental principles? What are the things that you think are important in doing CX right?
So I'll use, I talk about Starbucks all the time. And so people who've listened to me know that I am passionate about this example, but it answers your question, which is Starbucks in America. It's everywhere, I'm sure, globally. And I don't like paying triple the cost of a cup of coffee, but I do. Why? Because I walk in and people say hello, right? Human factor. Hello, how are you? When I go to my local place, they know already what I like, what I enjoy, because I've been there before. So they'll ask me, they'll personalize it, and they'll also walk me through other things to try. When they make a mistake, there's no fighting or debating or arguing. They just fix it. So that's what I mean by do the basics, and the rest of it will fall into place. There's so much we can control.
Yeah, I like that. I talk about that a lot in my own stuff. there's so many basic things that we should do. You know, some of the examples I give, I'll say Virgin, you know, one of the companies we use as model examples, they focus on customer experience. Disney's all about just making the, you know, people happy. So these are all really basic principles. But as you say, if you can do the basics right, you can build big companies like Starbucks is the example you've given.
Absolutely. And there's so many doing it right. So, but that's a good one for when we talk about humanizing business. That's all I do is humanize business, and it's not hard. You just need that intention.
So if it's so simple, you know, to get to do the basics right and to deliver, you know, a memorable or a personal experience, do you get frustrated when you still see people getting it so wrong?
I do. And that's why I'm passionate to get more people in the field. And I work with several universities. I'm on the board of a couple universities and helping to get more education out there. Because the more that people are trained, the more that better experiences will happen. And so it's knowledge, it's intentional practice, and there's a lot of us, right? More and more, you could see on LinkedIn, the conversations and Twitter. I mean, there's just so much, discussion. So I think it's evolving, and companies are actually all hiring CX professionals and designing organizations around them. So it's a movement. It is happening. I feel it.
Yeah. And in examples, you know, I still hear people think about customer experience, you know, in the broader sense, and they think of it, it's a little bit of an investment or it's an overhead. You know, they don't necessarily see, you know, the competitive advantage, I guess, that, you know, having a good strategy or having your strategy linked to your customers can be. You know, can you give us a couple of examples where you've delivered a competitive advantage or a benefit to a company in that space?
So companies that really have an advantage is the companies that focus on voice of customer. The acronym is VOC. And what I mean by that is infusing the customer voice, their input, early on as companies are designing new products and services and even market messaging. And so what I'll do wherever I work or whoever I work with is to bring the customer to the table and show them. It could be concept validation, right? Imagine if, what do you think? If you had these value propositions, you know, rank for me in order, what resonates, what doesn't. And that helps inform the market messaging that goes with that product launch or service. And so it's so valuable. The companies that are asking customers up front really are able to meet their needs. And it's not a guess, they're able to actually meet those expectations. So the answer is the companies that focus on quality over speed to launch. Those are the most successful. And those are the roles that I've been in to make sure that that quality is there.
Okay, that makes sense. And just for people who maybe don't understand voice of customer as well, do you want to just explain that a little bit? What a voice of customer means, and you know, and how that can be utilized?
Yeah, so voice of customer is just a fancy word for customer feedback. It's getting the feedback from people about a topic, a product, a message, an experience. Usually we go through an experience around a journey from when you're buying something, you're learning, you're buying, you're paying, you're getting help. And so what we'll do as practitioners is get customer feedback, and it's done in two ways. Multiple ways. One is what you would know as surveys, very structured. But then there's also unstructured ways where you could just go on social media or rating and review sites and see what customers are saying about your brand and your competitor. And so all of that is what we call voice of customer. And if you aggregate all that feedback, you will have so much insights to improve experiences.
Okay, that's that. Again, that sounds really important and really valuable. You know, if we can take, if we can ask what people want and then give it to them, that sounds like that could be a real big advantage. So you've recently written a chapter in the customer experience series book. Is your chapter around voice of customer?
It is. So I talk about what is it, why it's important, and what are the best practices that you can do, that anybody can do, no matter how big or small the company is, no matter what industry. These are the best practices that you can do. And I like to call it low-hanging fruit. This is stuff that's easy to do. It doesn't require a big investment. And it works. It's proven so that you can deliver an ideal experience that matches customer expectations. And so, yes, that's what I write about in the book.
Okay. And what kind of, to somebody who may be listening to what we're saying, talking about today and thinking, you know, voice of customer, what can that deliver me? What kind of things can it deliver me, maybe internally and externally as a business?
Yeah, it's a great question. So internally, I forgot to mention a really, really important point, and that is voice of customer is the customer feedback, and you have to get that to be able to make sure you're meeting their needs. But there's also the voice of employee. VOE is the acronym. And that's where you talk to your employees about their experiences, especially the front line. They're working with the customers all the time. And so getting their feedback for when you're developing something or creating something, getting their feedback, even if it's a new process, it makes them feel engaged. It makes them feel valued. And when they do, that's when the magic happens. They deliver customer excellence and they own that. So bottom line is get the voice of the employee feedback, get the customer, but one caveat, never ever replace the customer, the employee feedback for the customer. You marry both, but one doesn't replace the other.
Okay, so when you're saying one doesn't replace the other, is that potentially because they've got two different perspectives, even though they're in the same transaction? Because they may be seeing different sides of the same transaction, perhaps?
Well, so yes, but sometimes companies will take shortcuts. They're going for speed. And so they'll use the employee to represent the customer what they want and need. And you have to go direct to the customer. You have to build that in a timeline. So the employee feedback, yes, it matters so much, but you have to go directly to either your customer or your target market, which is all about these personas. These are the people that you want to buy your product. And so you have to go to either who represents your customer or your actual customers and validate that what you've designed, what's their perception's reality, right? So that's why the feedback and the voice of those audiences is it's the game changer, which is what I write about.
And it takes a bit of bravery, right? To ask either your employees or your customers, you know, how are we doing? Is there anything you'd like to change?
Yeah, I sigh because you're so right. It's you can't be afraid of the feedback. The feedback is to make things better. And so you're right. It is bravery, and it has to be viewed where it's helpful. And also when you do ask for feedback and they give it to you, if it's an employee or a customer, letting them know you did something with it. That makes them feel valued and heard. And I know when companies ask me for feedback, if I'm going to take the time, I really notice when they tell me, based on your feedback or a collection of people like you who've given us this feedback, here's what we did. I'm impressed. I'm loyal.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. And I'm going to ask you a feedback question. I had a workshop this morning with one of my clients in England. They're a bank, quite a big startup bank. You know, they've been going for a few years now. And the question they were asking was, or the problem that we talked about today was, they were asking for feedback and they weren't getting the results. They weren't getting people filling it in. And when we dug into it, the way they were asking for the feedback was they were sending an email direct to a person and saying, can you give me feedback? and they were getting a very mixed response. Some people were filling it in. Some majority of people weren't filling it in. Is there anything you could see in that? I mean, I had a guess at what it was, but is there anything you could see in that could be wrong?
So I think there's a lot of variables. I think one is the survey design, right? That's a science and an art. How are the questions worded? What was the order? What's being asked? So that's one thing. The second thing is timing. When are you asking people? And then also, how important is the feedback? So for example, if this is not a transactional thing, but let's say it's a relationship survey or feedback that you want to know from a bunch of customers who have a contract, and you want to know well in advance before the contract ends, that the likelihood they're going to stay or leave, and their perception, and how have things been going. Sometimes that's a phone call more than an email, right? So I think that you have to test and learn with that market and that audience, what they're most receptive to, and how important is it that feedback, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a text with a smiley face, or whether it's an e-survey. There's different tactics depending on the situation.
Okay. I mean, the thing we talked about today is we're going to try and turn it into an anonymous survey, because that was one of the things I felt was the problem. We were sending an email to somebody, and maybe if they've got to give good news or bad news, definitely bad news. I almost felt whether they were going to give that as freely in an anonymous survey or not. What would be your thoughts on that, maybe?
Yeah, I think anonymous is good, unless, of course, you're giving some kind of incentive to fill out a short survey. Sometimes that works. Sometimes you don't need it. I think the timing matters. So, for example, if someone just did a transaction at the bank, how quickly are you getting it to them? Because they just did something, it's top of mind. If it's days later, I don't even remember what I had for lunch yesterday. So, right? So timing matters too.
So there's a few things you said there: timing, length, order, the type of question. So it's not just sending out a survey. From your experience, the way you work, it's a number of things it could be.
Yes,
cool,
exactly.
Cool. Very good. So look, you've talked a lot about voice of customer. Is that a particular passion of yours? Tell me a bit more about doing CX right. Where's it going? What would you like to do and achieve over the next 30 years on the planet?
So it's a great question. I'm still figuring it out. I'm so fortunate that it's been naturally evolving. I haven't set a clear core strategy. My boat's just been going, both as a corporate leader and as my side hobbies, and they happen to match. So I'm fortunate. So it's the book. I'll probably start a podcast series. I've been a guest on many, but maybe I'm going to host my own. Speaking at events, I just love to inspire people to humanize business, because it will impact the greater good, create more happiness. So we'll see where this journey goes, but I'm on it for sure. I'm not getting off it. And it's through opportunities like this today that big and small impacts. I believe that.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. So look, we can hear more about Stacy because she writes for Forbes. She's just written this. She's just taken part in the Customer Experience 2 book series. She's doing a lot of podcasting. So I guess there's a lot of really great opportunities for us to find out more about Stacy. If you liked what you heard today, you can also look for Doing CX Right. And I think you're on Facebook, Instagram. I know you're definitely on LinkedIn.
Yes, I'm on all the social channels. Facebook, I'm just starting to play with, and YouTube, I'm going to definitely devote time there. I haven't yet, but I'm just beginning. So, yes, and most of all, doing cxright.com. That's where all my content is, my blog articles and resources. So, I look forward to connecting, whatever channel that might be.
Yeah, definitely. And certainly in the time I've known you, you've been very helpful and very forthcoming. So I'm sure people reaching out to you will get the same kind of friendliness and helpfulness as I've received. So Stacey, as we sort of
Thank
wrap
you.
up now, you know, what's that one key piece of advice that you'd like to give the listeners? I mean, there's a lot of experience you have got, but what, if you had to distill it down to one, you know, key message, what would that be?
I would say be very intentional about customer experience. Be mindful of it, be intentional, because when you are, it happens and it becomes habit. And it's all about the power of intention.
Great. Intention, like that. And if you intend to do the right thing, good things will happen, I guess. So
Even when your boss isn't looking.
I like it. I like it. Well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us today. We look forward to seeing you in the book. We look forward to seeing you around and seeing doing CX right become a real well-known brand around the world.
Thank you. Appreciate it.